Hi everyone, I'm DR.Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in adult transgender care. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here or a regular viewer that has not yet subscribed, please make sure you do subscribe. This way you're helping me and a lot of other people find this content. Welcome, by the way, to our Friday Q&As. This is the place where I answer your viewers direct and specific questions. So if you do have a question for me that is direct, not necessarily direct, but specific to your situation, my email is below. Email it to me and I will include it in the Q&A folder. Today we have four fantastic questions. One of them particularly is very interesting to talk about. I have, as always, randomly selected four questions for today, and I'm really excited to go through them. As always, everybody's information is blocked for privacy reasons. I'm going to put timestamps also below for you to jump around depending on the topic. And without further ado, let's get started. First, a question for today. I'm nearly 29 years old, trans woman, who started my social transition a year and a half ago, and I have been on hormones for 8 months. I don't know if this is a common problem or not, but since I have started my transition, I have not engaged with sexuality at all. At first, it was because I was early in transition and did not feel comfortable, but now, even though I'm starting to get much more comfortable with my body on a personal level, and as people start to gender me correctly more and more, I expect it to be more comfortable sexually, but I've been feeling the opposite. I'm attracted to women, but I feel almost ashamed to engage or approach women in any non-platonic way whatever. I feel like I'm still not enough. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I do. I can't get the transphobic societal narrative out of my mind. I am very lucky to be accepted and welcomed by every single woman I met since transitioning, but still feel like a stranger. I don't know the source of my problem exactly, but maybe I'm still dealing with internalized transphobia. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear your input on it. This is a great question that revolves around here you are year and a half into transition. You're starting to gain that confidence. You're starting to be gendered according to your gender, and you're starting to feel overall that better sense of being. And yet at the same time, while being attracted to women, there's something that's holding you back from engaging with women, like you said, even in platonic ways. So there's some things that holding you back, I would say, that prevents you from even approaching or being in companies or proximity to other women. Oftentimes, in my personal experience, when I see this type of a challenge that somebody's struggling with, there are potentially two issues to think about. One, you're right, it could be internalized transphobia. And in your case, it could be whatever internalized things you have internalized about trans women and cis women that may be inhibiting and preventing you from relating and forming relationships with women. And it could mean things even such as if they find out that I have transgender history, they're going to see me as an outsider. Or if they're going to find out that I have transgender history, they're going to think that I'm not a real woman. It could be simple as that. I mean, I know it's not simple, but it could be just one of the thoughts. It could be some other deeper thoughts you have. So if it is internalized transphobia, I really encourage for you to work on detoxing all of the thoughts. The best way to work through it is to you can do it by yourself, sit down and write down unfiltered all of the transphobic thoughts you carry within that you are conscious about. Even if they sound judgmental, awful, terrible, mean, just write them down. And then go through each one of them and start to basically evaluate where did I get idea for the thought? Where did the thought that I'm somehow less of a woman, for example, than cis women? Oh, it's because I've been told, because I wasn't born anatomically a female, I'm not a woman, okay? Are only anatomical females women? Is this true or false? And start breaking down, basically start doing investigative, logical, analytical work with facts that either support or facts that disprove your thoughts. When I see people do this type of work, what I find out is that a lot of the thoughts they very quickly debunk with just reevaluation of facts going for or facts going against. A lot of times when we have the thoughts in our head space, it's very difficult for us to see facts because we're so wrapped up in emotions and feelings attached to this particular thoughts. When you put it on a paper, it helps you detox it. So if it's internalized transphobia, this would be the number one thing I would recommend. Like I said, this usually happens, what you experience. In my experience, with two scenarios. One, internalized transphobia, which generally speaking, I think everybody pretty much has to some extent. So I just want you not to feel any kind of shame or badness about having internalized transphobia. We all have it, including myself. And it's not maybe sometimes to completely eliminate transphobia from your headspace, but it's more about becoming aware when internalized transphobia interferes and not letting it intervene. The second reason why I see this particular happens when somebody is afraid to form relationships with women, to maybe ask a woman out on a date, to explore your sexuality with a woman, is because there is something about yourself that you're holding back. And oftentimes you're holding back because you are afraid you're going to be rejected. This goes back to that fear of, I'm not going to be liked for who I am exactly. I'm not going to be loved for who I am exactly. I'm not going to be desired for who I am. And it has so much to do with also confidence. If you think about it, your navigation through life in your womanhood is relatively new to you. It's relatively fresh. And because it's relatively new and because it's relatively fresh, there's going to be, there's a time period where even you are meeting and, how should I say it? For the first time, seeing parts of yourself you never saw before. You, as a woman, have never had experiences of navigating relationships, fully embodying who you truly are. You haven't had experiences to maybe even have intimacies with women as yourself, now being authentically you. And because all of this is so new for you, it's going to be scary. It is going to be overwhelming. And it is going to be almost to the point of not only bringing up insecurities for you, but it is going to be scary to some extent. So acknowledge that that type of tension you feel right now, that fear you feel, is natural. Find little steps that you can conquer. Instead of jumping into intimacy with a woman, being in relationship with women, approach first the platonic part. Either women's circles that you can join. For example, can you join a particular women's group? Is there a group in your area? What do you love to do? Do you love to read books? Is there a women's book club? Do you like to go on hikes? Is there women who go on hikes together? Join a group where all of you show up there in order to partake in in a particular activity, and what unites you all, apart from partaking in activities, that all of you are also women. Start there. Start building your confidence in those spaces, and then push it a little bit further. So that would be my advice to you. Hopefully this is helpful. You're not alone in this. Anybody listening who's been in this situation, please comment below, share your thoughts, but you're not alone. And it can be hard navigating all the things, relationships, intimacies, because they're going to be new to you. And if you, on top of that, have also internalized transphobia that is negative and icky, it's also going to contribute to it. But great question, and I wish you all of the best, and I hope that you do step into those relationships. Question number 2. This is a really interesting question. I glanced at it earlier. Males in general are usually drawn or attracted to women whom they find beautiful, pretty, gorgeous. Furthermore, they find femininity appealing and pleasing to them. I would say stereotypically, generally, that's quite true. If a male over the years grow in becoming increasingly and highly drawn, attracted to things feminine, and the sheer beauty of the type of women he simply adores, such that it almost seems like an obsession, an idolization of them, and persistently so, could this ultimately give rise to transgender identity forming. The rationale is that in idolizing your preferred female beauty and femininity, it may potentially grow into a strong desire to become that which you idealize, that is, being a woman. As a result, a transgender identity may be triggered. Again, is this possible? I realize that most men who love women do not trigger any transfemme identities. That is correct. Could it thus be that this persistent obsession, idealization of beautiful women and things feminine is instead a reflection of, and thus awakens your cracks, an underlying inherent trans identity? I'm all for this type of question. I love it. It's a very interesting take. It's very interesting perspective on identity formation with the underlying root issue being idealization of something that you desire, something that you find beautiful, something that you find an object of affection. So in my experience, and this is, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on this as a psychologist and also as somebody who worked in gender space for 20 years and observing numerous root causes of gender identity. In my experience, so a few things first. Like you already pointed out, there are men out there who idealize feminine beauty and it doesn't trigger gender crisis in them. And you're correct. There are a lot of men out there who love our today cultural high standards of beauty, I would say. I think this is why, generally speaking, men are attracted to beautiful women. I think it's also what we culturally consider to be beautiful that becomes a bar. There's a lot of men out there. There's a lot of men who even cannot live without their subjective perception of what's beautiful to them. And in fact, if their female partners lose that beauty, they will then go on to find another beauty. We call those men womanizers, right? And yet, they're in no shape or form questioning their gender identity. So that's, I think, very important to think about, because that creates an almost a counter argument to this. Now, what's interesting is that you use the word idealization. I love that word idealization, and I also love the word devaluing, which is the opposite of idealizing. The reason why I love the word idealization is because as a psychologist, I have learned a long time ago and have witnessed this not only in myself, but in almost every single one of my clients. When we idealize something in another person, and I just want to say that idealization is different than admiration. We can admire something in another person, but admiration has a distancing buffer to it. Idealization has a desire attached to it, almost an element, a little bit of envy, because we want what we're idealizing. This is very important. Again, admiration is something we can do at a distance. I may admire, for example, a woman that is a woman that is changes her style, for example, every single week. I can admire that, but I myself don't want that because I'm able to recognize that's not me. Idealizing is something different. Idealizing now is if I idealize a woman that changes her style every single week, I'm idealizing it because I very badly want it for myself, whether I'm consciously aware of it or not. A lot of times we can idealize things without being consciously aware of it. Gender envy is a form of idealization. You're looking at a person, you're looking at their gender expression, their gender embodiment. And when you idealize it, you coveting it, you want it, you desire it, you want to be that. The reason why idealization is so important in this context is because as a psychologist, I see idealization. Now, every psychologist, psychology is very broad and nobody's going to agree with everything. So this is, again, my opinion, okay? I see idealization as a reflective mechanism where what we're idealizing and the reason why we're drawn as like magnets toward idealizing something strongly is because whatever we're idealizing is our internal, some kind of capacity, potential, maybe not to exact extent. I might idealize a woman that changes her style every week because something in me deep down wants to be free, wants to be able to not be afraid to step into different style. So it could be general. It doesn't have to be that I want to exactly change my style in the exact same way. Just like gender envy. You may be idealizing individuals out there because you envy their relationship to their gender. You want the same thing for yourself. But not because you necessarily want to be exactly like that person. Do you see? So this is another little distinction. So because idealization, and before, let me just give you quickly for viewers something to take away too. We devaluate it's the opposite of idealization, what we're trying to push away. And we devalue people strongly because we need to, this is our shadow. There's parts in that person that are mirror image or capacities that we carry within ourselves that we don't want to acknowledge. Okay? So if we strongly devalue a particular political figure, there's a high chance that they have certain attribute that we are not trying to accept within ourselves. Again, it's not specific, okay? It can be something general or something that is more symbolic. So let's get back to the question. In my opinion, if somebody idealizes woman beauty to a point where it becomes an obsession, to a point where it forms a transgender identity, the root cause is not idealization. Idealization is a trigger point. Idealization in this case is an indicator that you're idealizing femininity to such extent because there is already a part of you, whether you're conscious or not conscious about it, that is feminine. There's a part of you that is feminine, and maybe feminine to a bigger extent than your masculine identity, where it skews things down the road. So the root cause of transgender identity could be anything. It could be childhood onset. It could be biological. It could be because you have more fluidity to yourself, but over time you realize that femininity is more for you. Root cause could be a lot of other things. Idealization just becomes almost like this wool that starts to unravel a sweater being transgender identity. This is why it's really important for people to pay attention to what they idealize, because it's gold, just like devaluing. What we idealize tells us what we want, what we desire, and therefore tells us what we're capable of. If you idealize some musician and you constantly daydreaming about becoming a musician, chances are there's a big part of you that is talented toward playing music. Maybe you won't become as huge as this musician, but there's a part of you that wants to play music and wants to come out. So this is how I would answer this question. I don't think that idealization and obsession with femininity leads to trans identity in this case. I think in this case, it's the part of that feminine is already there. But this is such a great question, fantastic question. I'd love to hear what other people think. But yeah, really good question. And by the way, there's a lot of videos where I share with all of you how having sexual preferences toward wearing feminine clothing can also become root cause of gender identity. It's very different than this. In this case, a person doesn't necessarily idealizing. A person in this case is just drawn to feminine aesthetic and feminine items, feminine clothing, wearing feminine clothing because it gives them sexual gratification. And I have a lot of videos talking about how it leads to shame and guilt cycle and leads to questioning of identity. So it's different than actually idealizing things. Great question. Question number 3. Like I said, we have some really good questions today. As someone who would like to remain low-key about my transition with some people, I worry about what kind of attention I might attract if I eventually have a large chest, especially if I don't fully pass as a woman. What are your thoughts on telling some people white lies to avoid confrontation? For example, saying to someone who you sense is hostile towards transgender people, it's not that I'm trans, I have a medical condition called gynecomastia. Or I have very low testosterone and don't want to change that. I feel like saying things like this could potentially disarm that kind of hostility, and perhaps for certain people, it is unfortunately necessary. Very good question, interesting question. I haven't had anybody ask me this question. So there's 2 ways that I would encourage you to look at this. One, if you are genuinely in a situation that is potentially hostile, that could potentially even lead to harm, I think in that case, I always think safety is first. Even safety at expense of lying, safety is important, especially today. So in this case, it's not an issue of, but you moralistically lied. No, safety is important, period. And trans people are today, even I would argue that you are put in a position where you have to lie in order to protect yourself. So safety is important, but this is where safety is concerned. Personally, I think there's a lot of people who I wouldn't really call it white lie, who are just not disclosing things about their personal lives. And if somebody questions their identity because you're starting to form a little bit of breast tissue due to hormones, and you still don't want to disclose personal life, and you come up with some other explanation, I don't necessarily see it as white lie. I see it as more none of your business, and this is my nice way of telling you none of your business. So that's one. In general, I think that it's a very personal thing. To disclose, to not disclose, to be honest, to not. I do add a little bit of slight warning. And the warning is this. One has to be almost a little bit more conscious and aware that I'm being asked about something, and for safety reasons or because it's nobody's business, I'm going to tell them something else. That's one thing. That is fine. And if you're asking me this, then that's, in my opinion, that's fine. Your prerogative. However, this is where I think it could be problematic. If a person is constantly comes up with narrative or shies away from affirming their identity, especially if somebody is asking them what their identity is, in non-hostile, safe spaces, and you are shying away from affirming or just owning who you are because you are ashamed, you are feel like somehow you're going to be seen less as, you are have internalized transphobia. In this instance, I would say this is not the best thing to do because it will breed and accumulate imposter syndromes that might be so deeply seated, it is going to be hard to eradicate. Again, the difference is you are actively choosing not to share some information about your trans history for safety reasons or because it's nobody's business, you just decide to. You're consciously doing that versus you're not sharing because you're ashamed of who you are or because you're struggling to own who you are or because you have internalized transphobia. You see there's a big difference here. So in this case, I just encourage all of you to think about how it might continue to lead to this hyper anxiety, hyper vigilant way of existing where you constantly feel almost paranoid because you never end up solidifying then your sense of ownership of yourself as a person with transgender history. So keep that in mind. But other than that, great question. And yeah, if it's for these reasons, I don't see anything wrong with that at all. Would love to hear what others think, so feel free to comment below. And our last question for today. I notice as I go further into my transition and my body and mind change more, I'm less interested in dressing in a feminine way or trying to get others to see me as female. I feel a subtle feminine energy inside effortlessly radiating out into all that I am and do. And it's enough. It's like I'm simply me and in tune, and not really conscious male or female. I wonder what your thoughts are on this thoughts are on this, and if you have worked with anyone in your practice who felt this way. Great question. It's a great question because this is common. And in my opinion, this is really healthy and beautiful thing that is happening here. And it sounds like what's happening is that, in the beginning, it sounds like, now not for everybody, you want to be very careful, but for some of you out there, dressing in a feminine way and trying others to see you as a female, a lot of time has to do with belonging. A lot of time has to do with validation. A lot of time has to do with even believing that this is who you are. And for a lot of people who engage in this, it lasts up to a point until you start building internal confidence and ownership of who you are. This is why I talk about acceptance being so important. Once you accept that you're a woman with transgender history and you own it, you don't need to, you step away from all that hypervigilance. Oh, I'm going to the store, I need to wear makeup because if I don't have makeup, that's my crutch. People are not going to see me as a woman. You know you're a woman. And you no longer necessarily need everybody to validate you. this is great if this is where you're at. I think it's fun. I mean, that's gotta be so much easier to live your life this way, because you're just you and you don't know anybody anything. And I think this is really beautiful. Having said that, I want to say this, that there are a lot of women with trans history who just genuinely love everything feminine, aesthetic, clothing, makeup. I mean, I'm one of those. So, I mean, I don't have transgender history, but I'm one of women among all of you other women who are into that. So I just want to be careful that loving all that stuff, there's nothing wrong with that too. And enjoying all of that, nothing wrong with that too. But if you are a woman that is realizing that in the beginning, all of that served a function for you, of maybe initially giving you confidence to step outside in the world, or maybe initially whatever it is that function and purpose was of that. But as you continue on your journey, you realize that it doesn't really, I don't need this. I feel content with myself. I have this flow in and out. I know who I am. And all of these things over here don't really align and resonate with how I see myself as a woman. And you're able to let it go and recognize that, that is fantastic. That is so, so great. So great. Same way for those of us who love clothing and makeup and all those things. And if some of us are doing it too much for external, hopefully there comes a time when we realize that I love it and I'm doing this for me, not for anybody else. So this is really good. If you're in this place, it's great. I have a lot of clients who, in the beginning of transition, there's a lot of things people take on and engaged in that is a crutch, a safety, a comfortable thing that later down the road you just either end up keeping because it aligns with who you are, or you just dismiss because it's not really who you are. This is part of the past. You are stepping into femininity, you're exploring things, and you're learning what belongs to you and what you need to let go. Really, really good questions for today. If you do have questions for me, my email is below. Feel free to go ahead and email it to me, and I will include it in Q&A folder. Comment, share your insights, share if you have any kind of additional input for any of these questions. As you know, I don't know it all, so the more of us contribute, the more enriched these discussions are. So comment, share below, like this video, and also subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.